I know, I already talked about Gung-Ho in my O-Ring Saga series. But I feel like I could get a little bit more into it. The full court case can be read on Justia. I gotta say that they spent a lot of time figuring out if Gung-Ho was a descriptive or suggestive term. Now, I'm just a humble country content creator, so I don't understand all the legalese in the court document. But I do understand when there are shenanigans afoot. Let's look at Lanard versus Hasbro. Gung-Ho versus Gung-Ho. In 1923, three Jewish brothers began a company selling textile remnants. This company was Hassenfeld Brothers. Eventually, they began to sell school supplies, and by 1942, they primarily began to sell toys. Among their first toys were modeling clay and doctors and nurse kits. Their first big hit was 1952's Mr. Potato Head. On the 2nd of February 1964, Hasbro began selling military action figures under the name G.I. Joe. This was another hit for Hasbro, but popularity began to die down by the 1980s.
Bullet and the human bullet.
In 1982, Hasbro produced a line of G.I. Joe dubbed G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. This new line consisted of 3 3/4 inch figures.
He'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there.
It's here, the G.I. Joe collection. Infantry trooper. Codename Grunt. Bazooka soldier. Codename Zap. Mortar soldier. Codename Short Fuse. Laser rifle trooper. Codename Flash. Ranger. Codename Stalker. Communications officer. Codename Breaker. Machine gunner. Codename Rock and Roll. Counterintelligence. Codename Scarlet. Commando. Codename Snake Eyes. Each sold separately. G.I. Joe from Hasbro.
This G.I. Joe line had 9 individual characters, each with his or her real name, code name, uniform, military specialty, biography, and personality. The figures retailed at $2.80 to $5. They were sold in toy stores, department stores, and other stores aimed towards children aged 4 to 14. From 1983 to 1985, Hasbro introduced Etienne R. Lafitte, codename Gung-Ho, to G.I. Joe, a bare-chested tattooed Marine with a machine gun and backpack. Although in 1986, Gung-Ho was removed from the action figure line. Hasbro continued to promote the character in 1986, licensing it in comic books, book cover illustrations, and album covers, just to name a few. Hasbro reintroduced Gung-Ho in 1987. This version of Gung-Ho appeared in a full-dress Marine uniform. From 1983 to 1988, Hasbro spent over $65 million to promote its G.I. Joe line. Because Hasbro does not advertise single characters, it cannot specify what amount can be attributed to promoting the Gung-Ho character. Sales of the G.I. Joe line in 1986 amounted to $170 million, approximately 13% of Hasbro's total sales for that year. Gung-Ho was a top seller in 1983 through 85 line. From 1983 to 1988, close to 2 million figures were shipped. Lanard Toys Limited began its life in 1978 making tool toys. But in May 1986, it commissioned a toy designer to create a toy product to compete with Remco and other companies for military-style action figures. According to the designer, at the time, Lanard and other toy companies would tap the secondary market by avoiding promotional costs and producing toys on the per-order basis, thus making the toys less expensive. The toys would be similar and interchangeable with other brands. The designer who suggested the name of Gung-Ho for the new project worked on the development of the figure line from May until December 1986. He was aware of the G.I. Joe A Real American Hero line and its popularity. He used Hasbro's G.I. Joe packaging and its 1983 through 1985 catalogs for reference. In October 1986, Lanard searched the term Gung-Ho and found that it hadn't been federally registered as a trademark in the toy industry. Lanard then introduced its Gung-Ho International Security Force line in its January 1987 catalog and at the 1987 New York Toy Fair. They displayed the line in its New York City showroom. It was 12 action figures and 2 vehicles. The figures included Junkyard, Gunner O'Grady, Large Sarge, Dragon Han, Shark, Hammer, Tony Tanner, Boomerang Billy, John Eagle, Hiro Yamada, Flashfire, and Whispering Willie. Other toys that you might have seen at this toy fair were what many people my age would consider to be the best and classic toys of all time. This includes Masters of the Universe, Barbie, The Transformers, My Little Pony, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles' Rookie Year, Ghostbusters, and who could forget Mask? But another toy line was also there. G.I. Joe A Real American Hero.
And here's Gung-Ho, airborne, Doc.
Lanard began its first shipment of Gung-Ho figures to the United States on January 27, 1987. Like Hasbro's G.I. Joe action figures, Lanard's figures were 3 3/4 inches. Each figure had its own name and biography. Lanard's blister card packaging, target market, and sales to stores were similar to Hasbro's. The retail price of Gung-Ho figures was $1.50 to $4 each, slightly below the prices for Hasbro's G.I. Joe figures. On Gung-Ho's packaging for its vehicles, Lanard states that the accessories are for use with all 3 3/4 inch action figures, including Gung-Ho trademark, G.I. Joe trademark, and American Defender trademark, which was a Remco product. Lanard had not advertised, marketed, or promoted its Gung-Ho line apart from the 1987 catalog and the February 1987 Toy Fair display. They spent little on research and development apart from the fee paid to its designer. Lanard estimated that they spent approximately $200,000 on packaging. Lanard had shipped over 350,000 of the Gung-Ho line in 1987, which represented almost 4% of its total sales. The case wasn't as cut and dry as Lanard bootlegged Hasbro's action figures. As the court document reads, the outcome cannot be determined by pitting Large Sarge, a member of Lanard's Gung-Ho line of figures, with his bazooka and ability to be extremely cool and competent under deadly pressure, and to formulate strategy revisions in the heat of battle, against Hasbro's Gung-Ho action figure with his dress saber and ability to low crawl through the nastiest black water, stinking mud, and bubbling slime. Instead, to evaluate the likelihood of confusion between Gung-Ho the character and Gung-Ho the toy line. Hasbro and Lanard agreed as to the etymology and current common meaning of Gung-Ho. Basically, a butchered Chinese word picked up during World War II to mean work together. Hasbro had to demonstrate A. irreparable harm, and B. the likelihood of Lanard's success on Hasbro's merit. The court ruled in Hasbro's favor that there is a likelihood of confusion due to Lanard's use of Gung-Ho on its line of action figures. The strength of the G.I. Joe toy line, the degree of similarity, their build, and the fact that they were sold in the same consumer markets established the likelihood of confusion and irreparable harm to Hasbro. Lanard had to remove its Gung-Ho toys from the market, and after a while, they came up with a new name: the Core. The Core figures would be the exact same ones as Gung-Ho, just renamed and repacked. They also included 4 new figures: Whipsaw, Jones, Croc, Bengala, and Crowbar. Lanard's The Core would continue to be sold even after Hasbro's G.I. Joe went on hiatus from store shelves. This would grant them many more fans than the ones they had already obtained in the 1980s. Of course, this wouldn't be Lanard's last court case. They would be pit up against Hummer at a later time. The Core are not only important in the military action figure landscape because of competition, but because it gave parents a more budget-friendly alternative. It gave children the chance to get more figures in one trip to the store, or in some cases, it gave less fortunate kids the chance at getting a military action figure with a similar quality as the more expensive alternative.